Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Wednesday, March 13th, 2024. Phil Giraldi is with us on Victoria Nuland. Did she jump or was she pushed? And why is there a panic among leaders in Western Europe? But first, this. How do you really feel about your financial future right now, today? Stable or uncertain? Despite all the happy talk that the Fed and the banks want you to buy into, I believe that 2024 is going to be a very unstable year, politically and financially. That's one of the reasons I decided to buy physical gold and silver, and I suggest you should do the same and do it now. Why? Because throughout times of economic uncertainty, gold and silver have rightly earned a reputation for stability. Owning precious metals has made me feel more stable, and it can do the same for you. Reach out to my friends at Lear Capital and get their free wealth protection guides. You can reach them at 800-511-4620. Lear has earned an excellent reputation by helping thousands of customers just like you move portions of their retirement savings into Lear gold and silver IRAs. It's easy to do, and it's tax and penalty free. Don't be caught off guard. Experts predict the markets may tank again. You'll be happy if you have protection in place. So call Lear at 800-511-4620. 800-511-4620, or go to LearJudgeSnap.com and tell them your friend the judge sent you. Phil Giraldi, welcome back to the show, my dear friend. How involved in American foreign policy from a management perspective has Victoria Nuland been in the past 10 or 15 years?
Well, she goes back actually farther than that. She was a Strobe Talbot protege. She worked for Dick Cheney as a security specialist, close to Hillary Clinton. She's been around for quite a while. So she's been at the center of a lot of policies that impact particularly on Eastern Europe and Russia. She to give her her due, she is a pretty much a fluent Russian speaker. I've met her a couple times, and she talks about her experiences working on a fishing boat, I believe, in the Russian fishing fleet at one point. And whether that's true or not, I don't know. But
was she undercover? Was she in the intelligence community?
No, this was part of her education.
Oh.
And so anyway, she's of course a leading neocon. Her husband Robert Kagan is a leading neocon. They've always been hardliners. I believe she's been very much involved in a lot of the things that have developed. One of the things I discovered in doing a little research before writing a recent article is that she was very much involved with Russiagate against Donald Trump, and also some of the other activities that went on with the Steele dossier, if you remember that. She was involved with all that stuff, and I have a strong suspicion she was thinking ahead that we might well have Donald Trump as the next president, and she didn't want to be in a vulnerable position.
Well, she actually testified against him,
right,
in the first impeachment. Second one was about January 6th, ostensibly. The first one was about the phone call that he had with Vladimir Zelensky. Do these neocons, by and large, care about public opinion, or are they just focused on starting a war or destroying Russia?
Well, they're focused on destroying Russia by starting a war, and one might extend that metaphor to China also, which they've been talking about a lot more lately. So we see all these things developing together. But yes, they believe that the United States should be the dominant power in the world and be the country that sets the rules for everybody else and enforces them. Now, this is a sick philosophy as far as I'm concerned, but this is actually the way they believe it. I knew some people who ultimately became neocons in the CIA, and these people were just strict hardliners. It was they were Jewish, and apart from protecting Israel, they really were kind of the enemy of everyone.
Mm. Well, if these neocons believe that the United States should dominate the world scene, that we are the exceptional country, that what we want should happen, how do they square that with the Israeli lobby controlling the American government?
Well, I think they square that, but they're quite happy that that's the case. This is what, to a certain extent, they stand for. They are looking at a situation where, um, as you say, we are the exceptional country. As Madeleine Albright used to put it, we see far, we understand better. I mean, this is all nonsense. And but they're quite comfortable with Benjamin Netanyahu being able to tell the president of the United States to go fish, and they may not see this as a permanent state, but they certainly see it as something that fits quite well with their views right now.
Do they ever reverse gear? Do they ever acknowledge this war was wrong? We shouldn't have fought it. It's time to negotiate.
Hardly ever. There are individual neocons who have regretted the way the war in against Iraq turned out, have regretted what
We're losing you, Phil. Are you still there?
yes, which is that the it was the implementation that failed. It was not the objective.
So that allows them to push the blame onto somebody else. But before we get on to the status of things in Ukraine and the status of things in Gaza, what is your view on whether she jumped or she was pushed?
Well, I have gone through all the different views on this subject, and they kind of line up 50-50 one way and the other. I believe that she was fired. And I think I'm not unique in that view, but I think I'm unique in the way I explain it. I explain it by virtue of what we were just talking about, that she made a major enemy in Donald Trump. And this has been an issue that's been going around. And I think that probably President Biden was a little bit afraid of having all this kind of stuff come out during the campaign. Plus, and this is, I think, the important aspect. I think Biden is getting very nervous about the election itself, that many voters are really hostile now to the war in Gaza and also to the war in Ukraine and want out of it. And he has, I think, picked a good scapegoat in Victoria Nuland as somebody to kick out of his administration, who he can subsequently label as being responsible for a lot of these bad moves, like particularly Ukraine.
So this can work out for both of them. She
Yeah.
can say, don't blame me. I wasn't there when we lost. And he can say, well, we blame her because she's the one that pushed us to do this. Do you think the administration recognizes that Ukraine is on its last leg? And before you answer, and forgive me for asking multiple questions, yesterday, or maybe, yeah, yesterday, this is crazy. The Defense Department, after saying it doesn't have any more equipment to send to Ukraine because it sent everything it has that's a surplus to Israel, found $300 million worth of equipment and artillery shells.
Yeah,
So
it's funny how that happens.
yeah,
And this has also been paralleled with Israel, where I read a report today that there have been literally multiple secret shipments of munitions and armaments to Israel that haven't been reported to Congress as required by law. So this gets kind of interesting. Biden is arming two wars at the same time, is doing it illegally, and it's all a big secret. So, what if the American people ever had a say in all this stuff? I think they'd be scratching their heads and saying, first of all, how do we elect this guy? And secondly, what do we do to get rid of them?
What does the intelligence community think of a disaster like this? I mean, you and I saw, we did talk about a few weeks ago, that long piece in the New York Times, must have been 10,000 words, saying that there were 12 CIA bases in Ukraine, and they've been there for 10 years since the coup in 2014. Now, if there are 12 bases there, A, the Russians know it, and B, the Russians, I would assume, are listening to everything that's happening there, and C, the CIA knows that the Russians are listening. So I don't know what the value of the bases are, the value is, unless they want to feed false information to the Russians, but they'll know if it's false. So I'm talking myself into a tongue twister here. What is the involvement of CIA at this point in a war that, by all objective standards, Russia will soon win?
Well, this is acting under orders from the higher ups in our government. Essentially, this agenda against Russia has been around for a long time. If we go back to Victoria Nuland, obviously it started well before the coup that we arranged that overthrew the democratically elected government of Ukraine in 2014. This preceded that by about 4 or 5 years, where we were pumping money, and National Endowment for Democracy was up to its eyeballs, and its State Department was up to its eyeballs. And let me kind of define a little bit what a CIA base consists of. It can be one person. I have been in one person CIA bases as the only person. And it's very often tied in with some kind of surveillance program that's being run either independently by the agency or by the NSA or something like that. And so I suspect that these are, apart from the station, which would have been substantial in the capital in Kiev, these bases might be quite small and might be collecting electronic type information.
Okay,
I wouldn't think they'd be empowered enough to be doing anything active.
all right, but the agents and analysts at those statements are not stations or bases, whatever you want to call them, are not suicidal. If they know that this thing is about to be over and that Russia's going to run up to wherever it wants to run up to capture the Russian parts of Ukraine back to Russia, are they going to hang around?
Oh no, I mean they have evacuation plans, and I would suspect that virtually everyone in the government right now that's heavily involved in Ukraine is aware of where this is going, and just most of them are keeping their mouths shut in terms of their viability for promotion and other things within their parent organizations. This is no secret anymore. This war is over. And it's just a question of is it going to be a bloody ending, or is it going to be an ending where people can actually talk to each other?
Right. What do you think?
I think it'll be a bloody ending that will then produce people talking to each other.
And President Zelensky will either be eliminated or will wake up in Paris or Miami after he escapes.
Yeah, one of his 5 houses. Yeah.
Right, living on U.S. taxpayer dollars. We'll switch gears for just a minute because you told me about something before the show started that I didn't know about, and I'm outraged. I want to make sure I heard you correctly. So about 2 hours ago, the House of Representatives voted overwhelmingly to silence TikTok. Every single one of them took an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, the First Amendment to which says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. Couldn't possibly be crisper or clearer. But they think they can abridge the freedom of speech by telling us what we can watch and listen to and what venues we can go to on our mobile and desktop devices. All right. I understand that the governor of South Dakota has purported to take this congressional attitude that disparages the freedom of speech one step farther. What is she doing in her efforts to become the vice presidential nominee with President Trump?
Right. This is Christy Nome, and she is indeed very conservative and very close to Donald Trump, and is being spoken of as a possible vice presidential candidate. She has initiated a law. I haven't read the text yet, so I don't know exactly how it reads, but it's it basically is criminalizing um, anti-Semitism, meaning that you cannot, and part of the definition I understand is that criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic.
Mm.
So in other words, she's making it so that you and I can't be talking about what's going on in the Middle East in any candid way if we're in South Dakota, or indeed if we were in Florida, where Ron DeSantis has done the same thing. That basically they're criminalizing the ability of Americans like us to criticize a foreign state and its policies. I mean, this is incredible.
Well, when we criticize a foreign state and its policies, that is the height of protected speech. I mean, what will they try and punish next? Our criticism of our own country and its foreign policies, like Woodrow Wilson did during World War I with the Espionage Act. There it is. Chris, thank you. Governor Nome signs historic bill to combat anti-Semitism into law. Requires the consideration of the definition of anti-Semitism when investigating unfair or discriminatory practices into law. The government cannot isolate an area of thought or speech or behavior and make it criminal. The whole purpose of the First Amendment is to keep the government totally out of the business of speech. Now, what I've just said is not me. That's the Supreme Court of the United States over and over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the danger here is that if there is a fundamental right in the Bill of Rights, it's the right to free speech. And if I can't go and complain about what the Israelis are doing, and if I were a student at one of these universities now where, in response to this very kind of pressure, Palestinian student groups are being banned, but not groups that are favorable to Israel. This is hypocrisy of the highest order. It's politically driven, and it's being politically driven by the corruption of our system, which is something we've been seeing going on, really increasing over the last 20 plus years. This is just awful. We have become the autocratic state in many ways that we've often preached against.
Right, right. We are the people we warned you against. What is your view of this so called public breach between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Biden? Do you give any credence to it, or is this just Biden's efforts to pander to the Muslims in Michigan?
Well, I think that's certainly a part of it. He was shocked by how many people voted abstain in Michigan. Uh, and I think this is all, if we go back to the Victoria uh, case where she was basically involved in a lot of these activities, I think he's trying to distance himself to a certain extent from the damage that's being done. And I don't think he's going to be successful because he's not very convincing. But I would suspect that this is where we are going with this. He wants to win the election. He wants to make it look like he's a humanitarian. He's doing the decent thing with this pier that he's constructing, which will probably be in place after all the Palestinians are dead. And this is all like a political maneuver on his part. He is uh, Netanyahu has the stronger hand in this relationship, and he's going to exploit that, and he's going to do whatever he wants to the Palestinians, and Biden will do nothing effective to stop him.
Here's Biden, cut number 8, Chris. Here's Biden attempting to explain on MSNBC his response to the widely perceived allegations of Michigan voters that he was overseeing. This is a fact, it's not a perception. Overseeing arming and funding a genocide. Cut number 8.
Some have said they will never vote for you. One told Charles Blow of the New York Times, and I'm quoting, as bad as Mr. Trump's rhetoric was and him putting a travel ban on 5 Muslim countries, he wasn't overseeing and actively arming a genocide. Those are tough words. What's your response to that widely shared sentiment?
It's not widely shared. You guys make judgments you're not capable of making. That's not what all those people said. What they said was they're very upset, and I don't blame them for being upset. There's families there. There are people who are dying. They want something done about it. And they're saying, Joe, do something. Do something. But the idea that they all think is genocide is just not, that's a different situation.
He's in an alternate reality, Phil.
Well, I think he was about to wet his pants, but the ultimate reality is that these people live in a fantasy universe, which is based on power and their perceptions of who and what is important to them. They've left the American people behind them, and they've done this. So this has been going on for a long time now. Maybe it's time for us to take control again. The fact is, this is Biden never says anything that means anything. It's always a comfortable soundbite, and he walks away from it the next day. It's unfortunate, but that's what we're stuck with.
We are stuck with it. I'm going to jump back to Ukraine because I got to play this piece for you, a clip from his State of the Union address. It's number 5, Chris, for where Biden says there are no American soldiers of war who are in Ukraine. He sort of mumbles the of war. I'm going to ask you if this is some sort of a wacko definition that there are some soldiers and there are soldiers of war, but you may have heard this, you probably have, but here he is.
Ukraine can stop Putin if we stand with Ukraine and provide the weapons that needs to defend itself. That is all. That is all Ukraine is asking. They're not asking for American soldiers. In fact, there are no American soldiers of war in Ukraine, and I'm determined to keep it that way.
Wow. What is he talking about? He must know that there are American troops on the ground. Maybe they're out of uniform, and that's why he calls them, they're not soldiers of war.
There certainly is a defense attaché office in the embassy, which probably is heavily staffed. They are soldiers. There certainly would be advisors for some of the weapons that are being sent to Ukraine. Some of the training is going on in places like Germany, but there also would be hands-on trainers. I've seen this when I had my own time in the U.S. military, where this is how the system works. And I would not even be surprised to learn that there are some troops in uniform with and advising the Ukrainian troops in certain circumstances. I wouldn't trust anything he's saying about this because he figures he's going to get away with it. Nobody's going to identify it. He made the same claim about Gaza, didn't he? And there were actual photos of him with American soldiers with him, accompanying him. So this is just a lie that never goes away. We don't have boots on the ground, so it's all okay.
A lie that never goes away. I guess that's the way we can describe both of these wars. Both funded by the U.S., but maybe one that's drying up. I don't know if you noticed Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, seated next to Vice President Harris behind President Biden, the traditional place for them to speak during the State of the Union. I guess Speaker Johnson, couldn't control himself and nodded approval to we have to arm the Ukrainians to stop the Russians. Unfortunately, this is all in his hands. If he brings this to the floor for a vote, it'll pass. If he keeps it from coming to the floor, it will not become law, and the government will be finding these pockets of $300 million in equipment. That's the only way they can send it over there. Phil, my dear friend, it's always a pleasure. I enjoy all of our time together. I'm looking forward to seeing you, hopefully same day, same time next week.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Of course, all the best to you, my friend.
Thank you.
Coming up at 4 o'clock Eastern today on these very same subjects with a little bit different way of looking at it, but obviously anti-war and pro-peace, Aaron Maté, Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.